Hey guys, I've done a lot of, horror movie reviews, but this video I thought I'd take a little break and I'd do a top 10 list of some of my favorite horror films. Now, a lot of you probably be surprised at my list of my favorites. I mean, these films they're what I remember watching, and I've seen them a lot. And, these are like movies like in the famous horror franchises like Friday the 13th, Halloween, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They all have sequels, and most of these films are like from the franchise of Halloween, Friday the 13th, and so on. So I'm going to start. My number 10 favorite is Friday the 13th Part 3 in 3D. You can see you got the two 3D glasses. This film was a big improvement over Part 2. I personally think Part 2 is boring and it's just stupid. This one, they introduced Jason's hockey mask, and it's in 3D. This is the newer release, so it's in 3D. The older release doesn't have it in 3D. But I mean, this is a big improvement over Part 2. Even though it's not my favorite Friday the 13th film in the series, it's still a good watch. My number 9th favorite is Friday the 13th Final Chapter. This was really the last good Friday the 13th film, maybe until part gosh part 7 and part 8, part 7 probably. But I think they thought I was thinking maybe they were expecting the series to end after the final chapter, because I think I think Tom Savini did make up at this, and he wanted to see his creation like get killed off. So that's really the only reason why he did this film. And it's a pretty good movie, you know, but really after this one they started to get really just out of the plot. And this one really kind of stays to the true original Friday the 13th feeling, and it's just a really good movie. I really enjoy it. My number 8 horror film is Halloween H2O, 20 years later. Now, after Halloween 5, after Halloween 4, the sequels started to get really bad. We had Halloween 5, then we had Halloween the Curse of Michael Myers, which was a failure. I mean, I don't even know why they decided to make that movie. And then this comes out. This was actually Jamie Lee Curtis's idea to make this movie. And John Carpenter was originally, I guess, supposed to make it, but he didn't end up doing it for some reason. But this film uses music from Scream, and I just love watching this. I love the music, even though Michael Myers is kind of corny at some points. I love how it brings back Jamie Lee Curtis to the series, and this movie takes place as if 4 and 5 and 6 never happened. And it's just scary and entertaining, and I love it. And the music is great. And, I recommend anyone to watch this. It was directed by Steve Miner. You might recognize him from Friday the 13th. And Janet Leigh is in this movie. This is the only movie. This is the second movie out of two from which Jamie Lee Curtis and her mom, Janet Leigh, are in. And it's just pretty good. I mean, it's amazing. And the nurse from the first and second films, like the nurse that was driving the car in the first movie, at the very beginning of the movie with Donald Pleasance, she gets killed in this movie. It's just really good. I highly recommend this to anyone who has not seen it yet. My number 7 horror film is The Fog. Now, I'm not really a huge fan of John Carpenter's horror films, besides Halloween or maybe The Thing or Prince of Darkness. But after the success of Halloween, John Carpenter decided to make this. Now, when this originally came out, it was not a success at all. I mean, I don't think people understood the story or the plot, but I mean, it's not really scary anymore, but it's really entertaining how they could make a horror movie out of fog. I mean, and Jamie Lee Curtis is in it along with her mom, Janet Leigh, and they only share one scene in this movie at the very end. And Adrienne Barbeau was in this movie, and so was the girl who plays Annie Brackett on Halloween is in this film. And you know, this isn't John Carpenter's best horror film. I think he will be best remembered for Halloween. But this movie, isn't. I mean, people should watch this. I mean, most of you probably have seen this, but a lot of my friends, they've seen Halloween and, The Thing, Prince of Darkness, but they've never seen The Fog because, frankly, when you think of The Fog, it looks terrible, The plot you think would look really terrible, but it's actually pretty good. I have not seen the remake, so I can't, compare it. I mean, I heard the remake is a lot more modern and better, but I don't know. Once again, the music is done by John Carpenter, and him and Deborah Hill collaborated to make this film. And it's just left and right, scares. I mean, there's some pretty scary moments in this film. I highly recommend this to anyone who is a fan of Halloween or John Carpenter fan. Number 6 is Scream. And, after Wes Craven making The Hills Have Eyes and Nightmare on Elm Street and Last House on the Left, he created Scream. Now, I actually saw this for the first time when I was about 8 or 9. My parents had this recorded on tape. And I remember the scene where Drew Barrymore, at the very beginning, she gets, she keeps getting those calls from the ghost face and she ends up getting killed. I mean, that scared me to death. But when I got older and I watched this film, I didn't really think it was funny. I didn't really think it was scary. It really just made me more laugh, and then there's some blood and gore mixed in with it. This is probably Wes Craven's greatest contribution to cinema besides Nightmare on Elm Street. And the 2 sequels are pretty bad. I mean, Scream 2 is okay. Scream 3 was just bad. I hope in Scream 4, which is going to come out soon, I hope that maybe it will live up to the original. I mean, it really is killing me, like when they keep Who's the Killer secret. I always hated that. I can't wait to see Scream 4. But, Courtney Cox is in this, David Arquette, and Neve Campbell, Matthew Lillard, he was in Scooby-Doo, Skeet Ulrich, he's on TV now. And, I mean, this is just a great film to watch, and I recommend this to anyone who loves horror movies or who just wants. This is really a movie that I would watch like for a sleepover. I mean, that's the kind of movie, that's where I would watch it. Number 5, this will probably surprise you all. Halloween 2. Now, this is not like the traditional sequel. This takes place directly after Halloween, the original one. I mean, it picks up right where it left off. And in some ways, I prefer this one over the original one, mainly because the music looks more modern. And the guy who plays Michael Myers is a little bit more creepy. Even though in this movie, Michael Myers just like walks around, like really slow. And the guy who plays it, Dick Warlock, he was decent. He was a decent Michael Myers. Donald Pleasence and Jamie Lee Curtis come back, and so does oh gosh, I can't remember the guy who plays the sheriff. But this film was not directed by John Carpenter. It was directed by Rick Rosenthal, and he directed Halloween Resurrection also. it was produced by John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, and he did write it. And Halloween 3 was actually the last Halloween that John Carpenter was involved with. But I mean, this one, surprisingly, it had even a bigger budget than the first film. I mean, a couple $1 million more, and it did terrible at the box office. But I think it's one of those films where, as time went by, it started to get better. But this film, it truly scared me. I mean, I did see this one before I saw the original, so I kind of had a decent feel of what the first one was about. But I love this film, and I recommend it if you have not seen it yet. Number 4, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Man, what can you say about The Texas Chainsaw Massacre? Toby Hooper's masterpiece with Gunnar Hansen. You know, this film, it didn't necessarily scare me that much. I mean, when I first saw it, I was expecting scares left and right. But again, I guess maybe my problem is I just don't get scared that easily. But it's a 2 disc edition, and it has a crap load of bonus features, and it's remastered, so it looks awesome and scary. And this really did break a lot of ground. And this movie is one of the movies based on Ed Gein. And if you don't know who he is, he kept his mother like preserved in one of her bedrooms, and he would eat corpses, and he would make furniture out of the bones, and he only killed like 2 people. But when they found him, he had one of his victims hanging in a barn up by their feet, and they were gutted like a deer. I mean, it was really freaky. But this is a classic. I mean, most of you, if you've ever seen a Chainsaw Massacre film, it's probably the new one. A lot of people haven't seen the original, but the original one will always be the best one. Always. I recommend this to anyone who gets scared really easily. If you get scared really easily, I guarantee you will have nightmares watching this. Please see The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Number 3 is Halloween. I'll show you the inside. Gosh, what can you say about Halloween? It's John Carpenter's masterpiece. He will be best remembered for this, maybe The Fog. But, I mean, this movie scared me like hell, As PJ Souls, and she was in Carrie. And again, Jamie Lee Curtis, this was her first film, and directed by John Carpenter. And, Nick, God, I can't remember names. The guy who played Michael Myers. But anyway, the guy who plays Michael Myers is really cool playing it. He will be the best. Nick Castle. He will be the best guy ever to portray Michael Myers, maybe besides Tyler Mane in the new one. But this film, it's truly a classic. I mean, something the only reason what I don't like about the old one is that they don't really explain necessarily why he killed his sister. He just kills her. But I have heard when this movie came out first on TV back in 1981, they had to take out some of the sex and the gore scenes, and they had to replace those with new scenes. And so while John Carpenter and they were making Halloween 2, he made some new scenes and added them to the Halloween original. And there is a DVD release with these scenes, but I've seen the original scenes, but I've never seen them in the actual storyline of the movie. So maybe it'll explain it more. I mean, I've only seen half of one of the scenes that were added. But, the music is haunting. If you watch this without the sound, it won't scare you at all. I mean, it's not really that scary without music. I recommend this to anyone who has seen the new Halloween and has not seen the original that started this entire franchise. This will scare you to death if you are easily scared, just like Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And The Mask,